There's an immigration crisis in the United States, and there has been one for a very, very long time. And I've been disappointed in the conversation around the immigration crisis over the last 4 years because I feel like it's been incredibly disingenuous, and people are they try to make it seem, a lot of people have tried to make it seem as if the immigration crisis begins and ends with Donald Trump, and he's the root of the inhumane treatment of migrants coming to this country. And yes, he was terrible on this. Yes, he exacerbated the cruelty of our immigration system. But the real problem, the root problem here is one, it's our foreign policy and how over decades we, through imperialism and the war on drugs and regime change in all over Latin America, all over the rest of the world, really, we've breeded these conditions that make it almost untenable for these people to stay in their home countries. So that part of the conversation has been almost completely removed from the talks about the immigration crisis over the last 4 years, but also the fact that just the way that the system is set up is inhumane by itself. And whether Trump was there or not, it is rampant human rights abuses and mistreatment of people and criminalizing people who are trying to flee their countries that we helped devastate to hopefully have a better life here in the United States. So that is the root problem. And then, of course, the part of the systemic issue here is the basically unchecked authority of the executive branch, where they get to commit all types of human rights violations, detain people longer than they're legally allowed to in horrific conditions with absolutely, there is no repercussions for it. So that's another part of it. So Biden's been in office for almost 2 months now. And we were told during the campaign, you have to vote for Joe Biden because the kids are in cages. We have concentration camps in this country. We have children being separated from their family. We have kids being detained indefinitely in horrible conditions. And if you care about that at all, you have to vote for Joe Biden because he's going to wave his magic wand and he's going to fix it, and there will magically be no kids in cages. That's what we were told before the election. Well, Joe Biden's been in office for 2 months now. There's a lot of power in the executive. The executive has a lot of power over immigration policy, specifically the way we detain and treat immigrants in our custody. So if he was really going to do something about this, you would think he'd make a move, right? At some point to shut these concentration camps down and release these migrants who are being criminalized and held against their will indefinitely. Well, he's clearly going in the opposite direction. There have been stories about how he's opening more concentration camps. And I'm calling them concentration camps because that's what they actually are. A lot of people were saying that during the Trump administration because it made Trump look bad. That's the way I look at it now, because those same people aren't calling them concentration camps now. Many people in the media, many of the elected progressives, AOC herself, she stopped calling them concentration camps. And the reason why they are concentration camps is because you have large groups of people being detained indefinitely against their will without any real legal standing behind it. And they're being held in terrible, inhumane conditions that violate their human rights. That's why I've been calling these concentration camps. And just because Biden's in office now doesn't mean that there are any less concentration camps. So he's opened up 2 more of these facilities, concentration camps. One of them is in Florida. I think it's Homestead was one of the worst migrant detention centers, concentration camp, because not only the treatment of the people in their custody was horrific. Stories about people not being able to shower for weeks or months, wearing the same clothes from the day that they got there till the day to whenever they leave, if they ever leave. Stories about guards abusing the children and things like that. This was at this Homestead facility, and on top of that, there's apparently it's on a military base where there's a bunch of a toxic waste was dumped or whatever. So it's a health risk for these children to be on this in this facility, in this concentration camp. So it was shut down under the Trump administration. Biden is reopening that. He's opening another one. And now this story that I'm about to talk about right now, Joe Biden has now there's 3 times as many unaccompanied minors in custody than there were just 2 months ago. So something's going on here. I believe the number that are in HHS facilities, those are the more long-term facilities where they keep these kids and where they keep migrants in general. There are about 11,000 of them being held indefinitely. Nobody knows when they're going to leave. But those conditions are slightly different than the initial intake facility. So the initial intake is basically like a jail cell. And you have, for children, I believe for anybody, you have 72 hours to place them in one of the other facilities, the HHS facilities. But these are just ICE jails where they're initially put when they're caught at the border. So 2 months ago, there were about 2,500 children in those ICE jails at the border. Now they're over 3,500. And most of them, not 25%, not half, most of them who are there have been held way longer than the 72 hours that they're legally allowed to be detained in those basically prisons. So this whole thing is a mess. And the sad part is the media and the elected Democrats and even regular people in the country who were rightfully outraged when Trump was doing shit like this are either completely ignoring this from now that it's Joe Biden, or they're making excuses and rationalizing this and making it out to be a good thing. And this was one of the main concerns I had about Joe Biden being elected. Because even he can do the same shit, and most of his policies, domestic and foreign policy, it's much in line with the Trump administration, the Obama administration, and the Bush administration before that. The establishment, political establishment, they have their set agenda, and all these different presidents, they're just figureheads implementing really very much the same agenda. So my concern was that Trump put an ugly face on the horrific policies that the US government has been doing for decades and have been widely accepted. And because Trump was such an easy to hate figure, there was a lot of outrage and attention paid to him when he was doing it. Because like I said, he takes the mask off of empire, and he's the ugly face of empire. But what I was concerned would happen if Joe Biden was elected is he would do the same shit that Trump's doing. And instead of having to deal with a hostile press and angry people in the country who are rightfully outraged at the policies, now everybody's going to be playing defense because it's Team Democrat, it's their team in charge, and it's their team that's responsible for the human rights abuses. So they're going to actively cover it up and downplay the severity of this, purely for partisan reasons. And that is exactly what's happening here. Like I said about the way that they've covered the Biden opening even more concentration camps to hold migrants indefinitely. The media was they've gone from calling them concentration camps and human rights abuses to migrant detention facilities. Do you remember how the Trump administration was going around and acting like, oh, it's no big deal. It's basically like summer camp. We let the kids draw sometimes. And so I don't know why everybody's complaining. It's basically like summer camp. Now Democrats are using, oh, it's basically like summer camp thing. Oh, we made some tweaks since Biden took over ICE and HHS. We some minor tweaks here and there. So you really call them concentration camps? Is it really that bad? And it's gross to watch. And the fundamental problem here is, like I said, the systemic issues. And just because you give them a change of clothes now, and just because you may allow them to take showers more regularly, that doesn't make it less of a concentration camp. That means you're just treating people a little bit better in your concentration camps. So the question we need to be asking is, why do we have concentration camps here in the United States? And when you do what the Biden administration is going to do, which is they'll make these tweaks and continue to hold people indefinitely, so inevitably it's going to be another Republican, it's going to be another conservative, similar to Donald Trump, who is a president and gets control of these facilities. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to make it even worse. So the inherent problem is that the fact that you have concentration camps and you have these black holes, these black sites where you just throw people and hold them indefinitely, and they never get to see the light of day. They never get to leave. And the fact that you have that, it breeds even more human rights abuses and even more mistreatment because of how the lack of transparency and just the nature of us holding people indefinitely. It's going to lead to more human rights abuses. So you may think, oh, it's better that Joe Biden's in charge and he's handling it better, but inevitably he's not going to be in charge. And are you really comfortable with letting these facilities remain open, these concentration camps remain open, so that somebody else can come in and at a whim make it even worse, make the conditions even worse? That's what you're agreeing to when you're saying, oh, we have to have these facilities and whatever, we have to control, we have to take it. The excuse that people are giving out is, we can't just let the kids in the street. And I have several things to say about that. I might have to do another video about that. But point of the matter is, you don't lock kids up in prison-like conditions indefinitely because you want to keep them safe. In the case of a lot of these migrants, a lot of them have family here in the United States who want them, who are asking for these kids, and you refuse to let them go with their family. What is that? What is that about? That's if you were just looking out for their safety, if this wasn't a prison type situation, they'd be free to leave, right? Even the kids who don't have a family, they would be free to leave at some point. We have foster children in this country. Are they in prison-like conditions in foster care? No, they go to school. They go out. They do things. They're out in public. So this whole idea of, oh, we have to keep them in these cages to keep them safe. No, actually, you don't. But that's a whole other topic. We need to close these concentration camps, period. There's no excuse for them to be in existence. And these are serious human rights abuses. And it's a damn shame that after now that Joe Biden's elected, nobody really cares about this issue anymore. He has more people, more children in cages than Donald Trump ever had. And nobody's talking about kids in cages anymore. Those words, that phrase has mysteriously disappeared from people's vocabulary because it's not the person who's easy to hate doing it. Now it's Uncle Joe. Now it's somebody from Team Democrat, and people don't want to admit that they're just as shitty on this issue of immigration as the Republicans. And another point that I try to make when I talk about immigration, Obama and Biden, they deported more people in their first term than Donald Trump deported in his first term. And Joe Biden is now coming in and looking like he wants to even beat Obama in the amount of deportations that he's doing. Because on top of having these kids locked up indefinitely, Joe Biden is also deporting record numbers of people. So this is the insidious nature of the Democratic Party. They will get away with doing shit that is worse than the Republicans, but they won't get anywhere near the amount of public outrage because people are insanely tribal and partisan and willing to make excuses when it's their guys doing the fucked up shit. It's their guys doing the horrible policies and human rights abuses.